Okay, so the instructions for this were really interesting. It was to make a major presentation, and then all of a sudden it was to lead a conversation. And then I said, well, as long as I can do it the old school way, I want, flip charts. You can't do that. So, so this has been fun getting ready for this. I think that we're going to have a good time discussing this issue together. I tend to keep my remarks fairly short and turn more to conversation. That's my approach. I think if you want a really solid 45-minute, really awesome presentation, you should just zip across the hall really fast. Because Ben has statistics that are just so cool. I got a preview of that on the plane and on the ride here. So if you decide that you're not in the right place, you should move, and that's okay. So I'm not offended. This is your time, and I want to respect that. So you all need to do what's best for you. One of the things that I wanted to comment on is I was charged basically with this broad theme of entrepreneurship within the community vitality conversation. And I thought of entrepreneurship in two distinct ways, really. I thought of entrepreneurship in terms of economic development, business development. But then I thought of it as an approach to the way that we do our work. And so really my remarks are going to address both of those. And hopefully your conversation will add to that. So, it's great. We did a survey in Wisconsin. It was quite long ago. It was about 10 years ago. And we surveyed potential entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs. And we asked them, what is it that you value in terms of resources that you can tap into? What is it that you want from different providers? And they told us in no uncertain terms that we needed to be as entrepreneurial in terms of supporting them as they were as business owners. They don't need to own all the resources that they need. They don't have an HR department necessarily. They don't have an R&D department necessarily. They don't have vice presidents for this and associate directors for that. They are just-in-time folks, grabbing resources as they need them, and then giving them back when they don't. And they said we need to behave that way as well. And so I'm going to suggest that that's really in our culture as extension, is to think of ourselves as this entrepreneurial organization in terms of our folks that we serve, our clients, the partners and collaborators that we've got with us, that we don't have to control it all, and we don't have to own it all. It doesn't all have to be within our organizational purview. We just need to be good at working with other people, dropping in and out as they need us in the just-in-time resources that they need. So I also think that we need to consider this two-pronged approach. We need to think about our development as understanding entrepreneurship and understanding our role as facilitators. So I don't know if you've done this, but in Wisconsin Extension, fairly regularly, we cycle back to this question, is it process or content? As an educator, are we supposed to be experts in our area of specialty or our content area? Am I supposed to be an outstanding dairy livestock agent, or am I supposed to be somebody that organizes folks in my community? Am I supposed to be somebody that develops leaders? What is the role of extension? And we've settled on the answer to that question being both. We really don't think it's enough just to be a content expert. We don't think it's enough just to help people organize themselves. We believe that there's a rich sweet spot where both those come together. So the concept here is that you'll be most effective if you both pay attention to issues related to how you work with folks and how you help them learn, how you help them organize, and how you help them proceed in being successful, as well as bring the rich resources of the university and other partners to bear, and your own content expertise. So it's about both. And this is tough for some extension educators. It's been tough for some extension educators in Wisconsin. it's been tough for people that say, you know, I'm really not into that touchy cool stuff. You know, that's not what I do. I'm not about the kind of community organizing. I'm not about the soft science stuff. I was hired to bring expertise to bear on my clients' needs. And so it has been a challenge. And when we were in the first session, we talked about pivoting instead of just tweaking 3 degrees on the north arrow. This is probably a pivot issue. So this is one where you have to decide, can I stretch myself and can I do a bit of both? Can I be in that sweet spot where I'm effective at helping my learners organize so that they don't need me constantly to provide them technical assistance? And am I on top of my game in terms of my knowledge base? So that's something for us to consider. I'm curious what you all think of what entrepreneurship is, and so we were thinking maybe we'd do some interactive stuff. I thought you'd really like that. You'd sing Kumbaya when we're done. It would be a lot of fun. And then I got to thinking, yeah, I've been to those meetings too, so maybe not so much. But I am going to ask you to literally shout out when I ask you to define entrepreneurship, how do you do that? And I'll pick on people that I know, and I'm sorry, Aaron. So Aaron and I were in Delta together. What comes to mind when you think about defining entrepreneurship? For you in your context? Taking a chance. Take a chance. Jenny. Creativity. Let's see, I'm exhausting the number of people I know in this room. So, yes, sir.
So taking risk to take advantage of.
Okay, risk taking to take advantage of opportunities. Others. Jim.
Oftentimes, starting something without all of the resources you need to getting the process going and identifying what you're doing over the way.
Okay, so I mean, there's some unknown there, there's some risk there, there's some anticipation. Others, yes?
Seeking opportunity and always see a problem.
Absolutely. Okay, it's a mindset, there's an attitude, there's a culture about that, right? Yes?
It's not just a vision.
Vision, there's a thought. You know, I mean, it can't just kind of go off in a direction and make it up entirely as we go along. There's a lot of making it up as we go along in the area of entrepreneurship. Other ideas?
Recognizing a need or an application.
Awesome. So seeing opportunity, recognizing the need or an application. Is this only about business? Is it a business startup thing? Is that what it is? Does anybody see the value and the need for being entrepreneurial in the public sector, in government, in nonprofit organizations, in our churches? This is like a church because everyone sat in the back row first. So in some ways it's apropos. Yeah?
Enterprise and spirit.
Enterprise and spirit. Excellent, excellent. So we're talking about some attitudes, some values. Others, yes? Appreciate it. Okay, excellent. Yeah, back.
Much of what I heard so far sounds like we also need to be bold that it's not
There we go. Okay, so vision, but goal. I mean, an outcome. Yeah.
Bottom line for those
Making money. All right. Success. Other ideas. Okay. Connected to resources that they may not have local. So I didn't know how to figure out doing a Wordle while we were doing this, but this is what you said. Because I was pretty convinced that I knew the kinds of things that would surface. And you're spot on. It's about taking risk. It's about It's about small business to some extent. It's about public sector efficiency and effectiveness. It's about imagination. It's just turn to, pardon me? Did I see South America? There you go. Africa, maybe South America. That's cool. Yeah, I didn't catch that. The further away from the slide, the better you can see things like that, right? No, but there's another thought, isn't it? That it isn't always what it appears initially. I mean, that is really an interesting comment because entrepreneurs in an entrepreneurial mindset often see things entirely differently than other people. And so I really appreciate the comment. That's cool. I'll take advantage. I'll take credit for that the next time I make business with So, Deb Markley and Don Mackey from Roofery, the Center for Rural Entrepreneurship, are two of my very favorite people. And if you get a chance to work with them, you get a chance to go to a meeting where they're at, or a conference that they're at, it's worth your while. These are really great thinkers. These are people that are really thinking dearly about the issue of entrepreneurship. And they, together, came up with this definition of creative class within American society. Some create businesses, others contribute to the civic life of communities. And they come in many forms, those who create ventures with a public purpose. So my point there was that I think that those of us that are challenged to work on entrepreneurship issues need to think broadly about our opportunities. It may be that one of our greatest opportunities is to work with an organization that supports a traditional clientele and to help that organization become more entrepreneurial and help that group to help the folks that we work with. This is not about you have to drop your traditional programs or in some way that we're abandoning the important work that extensions traditionally done. But it is about, are there opportunities for us to work, again, some will pivot in ways where that will become their core work. We heard that from I think it was Sam, or it was from Dean. So, and others will just nibble at the edges. But these are some of the ways to nibble at the edges, are to work with organizations, not just individual businesses. Then there's the Babson School does some great research on entrepreneurship, international research, really. And this one I like because it's got most of the words that you all identified. This is really what you all said. It's an attitude and culture defined by initiative, imagination, flexibility, creativity, and a willingness to think conceptually, and a capacity to see change as an opportunity or problems as an opportunity. So that's really what we're talking about when we talk about entrepreneurship. And so I don't want to get mired down in that this is just about small business development. And so I want us to think broadly about this. I want us to see opportunities for us to work on entrepreneurship things in very different ways from each other. Because that's fun. And that's probably better than fun. It's probably appropriate. So I want to spend a little time on the economic development models that are out there. Most of you know this, and I hesitated to add this. I was talking with a few people last week at World Futures, came back for the second year, and I was talking about the things that I might cover, and they said, maybe we should cover some material that we probably all know together, but we might not have the same interpretation of it. So for those of you that know all this already, I apologize. It's a little bit of a review. But we've really been in America through these eras of economic development. We've been in the 50s through the 80s in this export base. This is where Mississippi in the early days recruited huge corporations, huge manufacturing firms, gave huge incentives, and we all followed suit. We all realized that was the game to play. It was all about recruiting big manufacturers that could export their goods globally. We say globally, I'm using these words. But we built them places to locate with infrastructure. We gave them that for the most part. We competed with each other for giving them incentives. And then we moved into a different era where we were more focused. We still did a lot of industrial recruitment and traction, but we were focused more on efficiency of firms. So it's more on retaining and expanding, and primarily on expanding firms. And there was a lot of change in the federal regulations. Deregulation played a big part in some of this. There were a lot of industrial consolidations, people signing economies of scale and wanting to do business. And so we were moving away from manufacturing and into some of the service industries. So there was this cost competition phase that we were in. And then we moved into what I think we're currently in, which is the regional competitiveness phase. And it relied more on entrepreneurship and innovation. It was less about recruitment. Again, we still did recruitment. And frankly, most of the economic development organizations in our communities, our counties, and our regions still do mostly spend their energy on recruitment. They haven't caught up with the eras of economic development entirely. We look at cluster research in order to find the right firms for the right places. We've been more strategic about the way that we went out and encourage people to locate. So, and we started to do a little bit less competition with each other and think of ourselves more regionally. But boy, that's still a tough issue because one community really does compete with the other, and we'll talk about that in a second. When I started in Extension, Wisconsin in 1989, I was working with two economists on campus, Ron Schaefer and Glenn Calder, and they had these strategies for economic development. And I remember appreciating that these were really challenging the community to think differently about how they would grow their business base and how they would support their economies. And there still was this conversation about attracting basic and export employers. So that recruitment and attraction piece was still part of our conversation. Capturing existing markets was really about the efficiency of existing firms. It was about simple things like retail leakage. Like why do people not shop in our locale if they drive 30 miles away and do business not locally? Encouraging the start of new firms was part of the strategies that we were trying to employ, and this really is the early version of entrepreneurship. And again, it's just a piece of it, it's not the whole thing. And helping existing firms become more efficient, and then getting external monies into your community. And this, again, is primarily about federal government grants and aids. And we'll talk a little bit next about how that's shifted and how we need to think of that in broader terms. So we have this traditional model of economic development. It's industrial recruitment focused. That's the big piece. It's a little bit of attention spent on the expansion of existing firms, and then very little bit of attention spent on small business startups. And I see that as an unsustainable model. I see that as, and I was good at PowerPoint graphics, it would be a top that's slowly spinning to an end and is about to wobble over, right? Because it's really not a very sustainable approach to economic development. So what are we doing today, or what should we be doing today that would be more sustainable? And I want to be clear, and the model is clear, it doesn't mean not doing attraction. It doesn't mean throwing everything out. In the same way that you need to throw out everything in your portfolio, your investment portfolio, in order to diversify it. You would change the mix, and you would diversify it, but you wouldn't give up on everything that's in that portfolio. So those of you that are investors can consider it that way. But attraction, instead of just industrial recruitment, is a bigger strategy than just business. It's about attracting youth, and we're talking about that across the hall. It's about attracting seniors, retirement community folks, which interestingly enough is a way to bring external federal dollars in, because these are typically people that have pensions and have Social Security, money that's earned outside of the economy gets brought into the economy. So strategies of recruiting young families and youth, and strategies of recruiting seniors are part of the attraction. And we primarily achieve that not through incentives, but through creating a rich quality of life, a desirable place to live. So it's a whole different approach to the way that we think of attraction. And it doesn't mean that we're not open to a business that wants to relocate, a place that wants to start a new planet in our communities. It just means that that's not where we're putting all of our eggs, that being our eggs. Talk about retention. Again, having a firm expand is great, but it could be that retaining a firm is helping them find a new market because the old ones were already there. It could be that helping a firm stay in town because we listened to them, because we went out and talked to them and listened to them and found out that they had some challenges in the community. Maybe they were things that City Hall could fix. Maybe they were things that the technical college could fix or address anyway. Maybe they were things that the community needed to have a conversation about in order to fix. But if we hadn't respected them and had that conversation, had a dialogue with them, they may have been one of those firms that leaves and does someplace else. So retaining business is hugely important. And then entrepreneurship, and again, I think entrepreneurship is way more than just small business startup, but it is that too, and that's important. So I think that the ingredients change in terms of the proportion of our energies that we spend on those. They change from narrowly conceived ideas like industrial recruitment has become attraction, which is not just a business attraction strategy, but a growth strategy. And the other piece that I didn't spend a lot of time on, but that's important to this, is that you can't sell an individual community generally and be very successful. You really have to sell the assets of the region. And so you've got to do some partnerships that are different. We have to think that understand that our competition isn't the community down the road. Now, I suspect in Nebraska, but I don't know, in Wisconsin, the community down the road from mine has a football team and a basketball team at the high school, and we don't like to get beat by them. And there's a rivalry. And that rivalry often is positive. It's because we have a sense of community in my place, because we rally around that team, that high school. We're proud, and we want them to be successful. The rivalries can get a little destructive sometimes when we are so hell-bent on the competition that we're not supportive of the neighbor down the road. So it's really a balance there, right? It's about holding on to what makes our community strong and what connects us in a positive way, and understanding that they're really not a competition. They're certainly not a competition when it comes to community and economic development. The competition is, if anything, the next state over, but it's more likely the next country over. It's the South America that feeds to our world. It's rare that a community will have all the assets that a business would want in order to locate there, or that a business would want in order to stay there, that their workforce would want in order to make that place that they like to live and raise their families. And so really it's connecting those regional resources in ways that make us a much more attractive place. There was a case where we were having two communities compete for Land's End. Land's End is, there's Connie's not going to talk, it's sort of like a belt. But for those of you who know Connie, that's good. So there was a community that was right next to Dubuque, Iowa, and then there was a community that was in the middle of the state. And so when the competition got heated, and it was clear that another state, that the folks in Reedsburg is the place that was competing in the state, that they weren't going to get it. They didn't want the folks in Dubuque to get it because they're not. It's not Wisconsin. But Dubuque is connected to Wisconsin and to Illinois by a bridge, for goodness sakes. And it's part of this big region. And what benefits Dubuque benefits Wisconsin and Wisconsin communities. And so they were so narrowly focused on this frankly idiotic concept that wasn't a Wisconsin community that was going to win landing Land's End. That they lost sight of that the region is what matters, and that the spillover impacts, the benefits are broad.
I don't understand that in Wisconsin, because in Wisconsin, between those two communities, every 3 or 4 miles at a crossroads, there's a bar to modify the behavior before you get to the other town. So why do you have these kind of troubles?
Yeah, well, because not everyone goes to the same bar or the same church, and if they all did, then we'd be okay. But yeah, they well, unlike you all here, we're just not able to get our acts together. But no, I mean, yeah. The fact is that we get lost in these silly competitions in ways that we don't see the bigger picture. Again, what's good for the community next door line is good for my community, and we need to just start seeing some of those opportunities that way. And that's a big shift, right? It's a big shift when you've been competing, and it's especially a big shift when the high school rivalries are out of control, and people are no longer working towards the same goal, same solution. So some of you may be saying, this is all fine and dandy, but the fact is that big business is what matters in terms of economic development. And I'm just going to share a few statistics. The Vibrate quote that I had, the folks from his university, have shown that higher rates of entrepreneurial activity have a strong correlation between economic growth. In fact, places with high rates of entrepreneurial activity have economic growth rates greater than 70%. There's a lot happening in a place that's entrepreneurial. It's estimated that each year 78% of all jobs are lost within the local economy due to this normal cycle, right? This turnover is natural. And if I had done this as a poll, I was going to do an Adobe poll, and then I chose not to. I must have been on the sheet. Don't tell them this. So you might not have guessed this correctly, but 55% of new jobs come from expansion of existing firms. 45% of new jobs come from startups, and yes, 1% of new jobs come from business relocations. And for the most part, those are zero-sum gains because they come from the state next door, or they come from the community down the road, or they come from even the state on the other side of the country. But for our broad economy, it's been a zero-sum gain. Now, it matters to our place. I get that. And it matters that there's a plant in Reedsburg, Wisconsin, instead of in a place in Iowa. But it matters to Reedsburg. But it doesn't matter to the broader U.S. So again, about 35% of Fortune 500 companies are displaced every 3 to 4 years by rapidly growing firms. The Dow Jones is really cited anymore as sort of a barometer of the economy. It's really massive. So things have changed dramatically in terms of how we see economics. Rural communities have a huge potential for entrepreneurship, but sadly, their revenues aren't usually as strong as those in urban areas. So any of you that are familiar with the work of the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank, the Omaha branch, Terrell, Jason Henderson, before he went to Purdue, we're doing some work on entrepreneurial breadth and depth. And so the idea was that there's a lot of potential in rural places, but in terms of the depth of entrepreneurship, that's usually found in urban areas. And so we have a lot of potential. We have a lot to do to grow. We have a lot of opportunities. We've just got to do a better job of reaching them. So I wanted to look a little bit at some Nebraska numbers to find out whether or not any of this evidence is the case in Nebraska. So I looked at establishment by sector, and so it's defined there. Resident businesses are standalone businesses in the area, or businesses with headquarters in the same state. we tend to focus on resident establishments because they have a stake in our places. They have a commitment to our places, and they're the type of firms that don't relocate quickly or easily. And the receipts that they have typically benefit our community much more than there was a business that was a non-resident business and they were sending their profits to the coast. I mean, of course, the big example of that is Arkansas and Walmart, right? So Walmart isn't a bad company or a bad store per se, and they do hire our folks to work in their stores and they pay them their wages and the like. But all of the money that they earn at that store goes to them. Doesn't stay in the local economy in the same way that a resident business would. And then non-commercial is just public and not businesses. So how important are resident businesses in our state? They're hugely important. 72% of businesses are resident businesses. And that's a huge opportunity for us. This is good news. This is an opportunity that we can build on. When we look at those resident firms by stage, and stage is just the way that the Edward Lowe Foundation defines businesses. Stage 1, self-employed are obviously less than the person. And then stage 1 are with 2 to 9 employees, and stage 2 firms 10 to 99, and 3, 100, 499, and stage 4 are 500 plus. Now, the U.S. Business Administration defines small businesses as those businesses with 500 or less. So it becomes difficult for those of us that have rural economies to use that as a parameter. So we like the Edward Lowe Foundation data. It's really accessible at goeconomy.org. It's really good stuff. So what's interesting is that of those 72% of the firms in Nebraska that are resident firms, 69% of them employ between 1 and 99 people. They're small businesses. They're really small businesses. So those that are still playing the recruitment game, those that are still playing the, all we need is another plant that will employ 500 folks making whatever. That's not the reality that we typically face in Nebraska, and Wisconsin statistics are not very different than this. So I'm suggesting that with 6.2% of the firms self-employed and another 70% of the firms employing between 1 and 99, that maybe we ought to be focused on entrepreneurship opportunities for those kinds of businesses. We ought to at least change the portfolio that we have so that it respects the fact that that's a huge opportunity for this city. We ought to pay some attention to it. I went a little deeper into some of this because one of the things that I'm obligated to do as an educator is to be non-biased, right? To be objective. And so the whole story is that big firms still matter and they're important because they do employ a lot of people. A few firms employing a large number of people took the red bars on the chart so that you can see that there's about 24 large employers of 500 or more in Nebraska. 14 of them are in Lincoln. I suspect most of the rest are in the Omaha area, but because the Omaha statistical area is Council Bluffs and Iowa and Omaha, I couldn't tease that out. But most of those businesses are in Lincoln and Omaha, I suspect. Most of those stage 4 businesses. And but they matter. Okay, so it isn't that we're going to totally neglect them. It isn't that we're going to develop strategies that are insensitive to that. Marilyn.
Do we spend a lot of times they pull out the agricultural businesses? Are they included in these statistics?
They should be included in these statistics, yes. So yourEconomy.org does a much better job, and so that's why we're turning more and more as a source. So let's say a word about agribusiness. I've worked a lot on value-added ag projects, helping folks that might have an idea of using their land or a natural resource commodity opportunity that they've got. And instead of just having a commodity business, turn that into a value-added opportunity. And so with Jim, some others to develop some materials that might be used. I think that's a rich opportunity in agricultural extension offices and offices that have a focus on agriculture. We still have ag extension committees in Wisconsin, right? So it's, ag matters. And so we are trying hard to figure out how we can diversify the ag economy, and part of that is value-added ag opportunities. And so I think there's a rich role there. Now, not all of my ag agents like to do that, because it's not their focus. And that's okay, they're not paid that's all right, we need them to do what they do too. But they're able to access other resources because they're the one. They don't have to be the one that delivers all these value-added ag business courses. They can tap into some other partners. And so that's where I'm asking us to think differently about how we do business. Not having to own everything that we do, but finding ways to be open to new opportunities and bridging other resources and bringing other folks in. So again, 92% of the businesses that we have in Nebraska employ under 10 people. Small business matters, and we better figure out how to pay attention to small business in Nebraska. But not at the exclusion of all businesses. It's a matter of developing some priorities. So, there's about a million different ways to slice this, and I would just say that a focus on entrepreneurs, both private, nonprofit, and public, is really important. And so as we think about the ways in which we can address this opportunity in Nebraska, they're all valid. They're all opportunities. They're all areas that we can work. Sam was showing the ABCD work. The whole idea of building on community assets is really important. Oftentimes, we talk about what we don't have. That's the starting point of conversations. These aren't very healthy conversations typically. They don't lead to very robust solutions. They typically are counter meetings. They're opportunities for us to talk about all of the bad things that always happen to us and always will, and how we'll never change. So, frankly, it's not that I think that we should pretend like everything's grand. I just think that we should build on the things that are going well. I think we should build on the strengths that we have. And I think that's a successful strategy for you all. And I think that if you started out a conversation, you were engaging a community partner and saying, what are the things that we're known for? What are the things that we're good at? What are the things that are special about our place? You might have some business concepts that would bubble up in way different ways than if you focused on the airport disposal or the highways compliance. So I think there's back to the first conversation we had about defining entrepreneurship, there's an attitude issue, there's a culture, there's a way that we need to change our perspective. Some of you heard me at last week at Rural Futures. I was doing a response to Del Gines from the Omaha, so the Kansas City Federal Reserve. He shared a really cool program they've got. And one of the things we talked about at length was that the attitude of the community matters, the culture of the community matters a ton. And in Wisconsin, we're suffering greatly from the fact that people don't always want their neighbors to be successful. Right? They don't have this value that says your success is to be celebrated, and just because I didn't have it doesn't mean it's that you shouldn't be happy, that I should be happy for you. And I mentioned that this is a pervasive attitude. I don't know if it's the German Norwegian heritage. I don't know if it's the Indian Catholic stuff going on. But we do tease that if those folks had named the big Great Lake to the north, they would have probably called it Lake Pretty Good, because they're just not interested in stuff like Superior or or, oh, I'm really happy for you. We just have this sort of dour attitude about things. And so changing the culture is really going to be important. And it's not something that's simple. But you have to start to celebrate successes, and you have to actually want your neighbor to be successful. And that's not always been the way that some rural places have. And I hope that that's not the case in Nebraska, but I just suggest that that's not an unimportant hurdle for us in Wisconsin. Encouraging broad community collaboration, we talked a little bit about the fact that there are just tons of resources out there. The need to be the single resource or the single place that people go and get all the answers, I think is folly. I just don't think it's necessary. I think that the greatest contribution that some attention educators have made that I've witnessed is they've brought together the partners, they've brought together the providers in the community, they've identified some shared interests, they've figured out what each is particularly good at, and sometimes they're good at the same thing, and that's okay. And they figured out ways that they can refer to each other, ways in which that I don't like one-stop shop so much. Okay, and that's just my gig. I think that it sends something of a wrong message. It sends the message that I have all the answers and that I have all the resources. What I like is a no wrong door policy. So you call any of us, and that is the right person to call. I will listen. I will help understand what your needs are. If I'm one of the resources that can answer that, I'll provide that support to you. If I'm not, I will gladly refer you to an appropriate other partner that does that. So that's what I think we need to start thinking about. We don't have the resources in Wisconsin, even if we wanted to be the only game in town. We just don't have the resources. I can't imagine what we do. So it's got to be something where we're comfortable with the fact that, yeah, we've got some really awesome things to offer. We've got a role to play, but we don't have to be the only one. And that doesn't diminish us just because there's others that we can partner with. So assembling those partners, figuring out what everybody's good at, figuring out how we can be better when we collaborate, that's really the point of that. And then strategically targeting the needs and interests of entrepreneurs. We've just got to get smarter at that. It's not just doing the same big program on, well, there's a business plan development course. It's 13 weeks, 3 hours each week, and it costs $500, but you'll get a business plan when you're done. And that's why we developed a different approach that I shared with Jim, Connie, and others in Nebraska a few years back, where we said, maybe by the time you get to the 4th week, by the way, at least half the class is like, oh, this is what I meant. I want to go on. And now I'm deep into it, and I got money on the line, and more than that, I'm wasting my time. So we developed this concept where we would have an initial feasibility conversation. Personal feasibility, is this really for you right now, given your life? And a market feasibility, is there really the possibility that you might have a successful venture? And by touching on those two issues, we were able to sort out people that weren't ready. And they chose that they weren't ready, right? We didn't say you're not ready. We're not gatekeepers. But we were the people that were able to help them instead of make this leap into this expensive and time-consuming initiative, start out slow. So there's a lot of different ways in which we can address this, and we just got to be creative about it. I want to turn now to us as educators. I want to turn a little bit away from the content and to the process. And I really enjoyed the assignment of knowing that I was coming to share some things with you and to help you have a good conversation. So I went back to, there's this bulletin on my left, the county agent's job. It's 1922 bulletin. I love reading it. It was so much fun. Then the next one is federal government and education, 1938. Extension programs help, 1947. New approaches for ag extension in problem areas, 52. Extension Review, New Age Leadership in '92. People Came First, a nice book by Jerry Apps, a good friend of mine, that's an author and former extension agent and specialist in Wisconsin. And then Revitalizing Rural America. I mean, again, Sam knows, Ronnie knows this isn't new, right? It's important that Nebraska is re-upping their commitment to this issue, but this isn't the first time that anybody's thought about how to invest in rural America, rural Nebraska in this case. And then taking the University of People, it was really fun to reread some of these things, and it challenged me because I was thinking about the role that I had in 1989, which is not that long ago in extension, right? In 100 years of extension, it's just a little blip. But even in that period of time, the role I had in working with communities and organizations and businesses has changed quite a bit to today. So I have another question for you, another full question without a poll. And so this question is, how do you describe extension work? So I'm going to pick on Jim because I know Jim and I know his name. So Jim, how do you describe extension work?
Depends on what part of it you're in. I think it's free to resource, research-based, and unbiased.
Okay, excellent. A resource, research-based, unbiased resource. Jenny?
I would say that the reason why I see that one here is because it's completely research-based for what we're
Okay. Yes.
built on that as things interactive.
Interactive. Tell me more. Do you mean? Go ahead.
Interactive with other people, using resources.
Okay. So it's not a delivery thing. It's a behavior.
Figuring out and using them for
Okay. Great.
There's a good bit of it.
Problem solving. Good. We're going to come back to that in a minute. It's great.
Helping people help themselves.
Helping people help themselves. So the Wordle, I don't know what this one looks like. Oh, same country, same continent. We used to exclusively see ourselves as experts, technical assistance experts. That was like we brought new information to folks. Then we had some extension agents came in. They were daring. And they tried to stir things up. They were activists. We didn't like that. That wasn't part of the culture. We were troubled by that. But we vacillated on this issue of change agent. And I think we're settling where you all were suggesting, where it's really somebody that can come in and support local folks that need to make informed decisions and assist them with that. And that it's really not about a one-way transfer of information, right? It's about a partnership. It's about a conversation that we have. It's about a different way of doing business. And again, I think that this will matter if we're going to pivot towards entrepreneurship education. I think that entrepreneurs are not interested in you telling them the answer to anything. They're interested in your help discovering answers. So the approach, I think, requires a different one, certainly than the old history of extension. And I'm not sure that we do this much today, anyway. But the idea of tech transfer is probably waning, if it ever really is part of our today's approach. In 1999, the Kellogg Commission on the Future of State and land-grant universities had a great group that talked about turning to our roots and engaged institution. And I think what they came up with is still germane today. I don't think we can talk about it enough. But this commitment to sharing and reciprocity, so that the relationship that we have is a two-way partnership defined by mutual respect. The problems and opportunities, and we for making sure that we didn't just talking in deficit context, are tied together. That the definitions of success are meaningful to both the community and to us in extension. This is a way different model than the old extension model. And it's one that we're getting better at, but I'm not sure that we're there yet. So this is when we're out working, I think, pivoting more than 2 degrees, pivoting in a new direction. This is one of our challenges. I was going to work, I stayed in the community that I had my last county extension job in, which was about an hour north of Madison, and I took my specialist job. And you know, my kids were young. I'd been at a 4-H conference where they had talked about personal and community assets, and that the higher personal and community assets, the more likelihood that kids would be well-adjusted and successful. My kids are really vulnerable at this age, and they're sort of big fish in a little pond right now. I'm going to move them away from their friends and their familiarity. They're all going to become juvenile delinquents. You know, so, and then I wouldn't be the one doing it. So I really made a decision that my community was, as much as I didn't care for it, was the thing to do rather than relocate my family. And so I was, so my commute has become more challenging since my wife and I moved to. And she likes to sleep, and I like to listen to NPR. And when they do their fundraising drives, then I listen to ESPN. But I apparently can't hear very well because I've got it out really loud, she says. And then, you know, we'll get someplace, probably like a stop sign, or the road stops, and she's like, shh, turn down, I'm trying to sleep. I'm driving you know, you ought to be nice to me. So anyway, I was listening to NPR last week, and this Ronald Heifetz at Harvard was talking about this new leadership idea. And I thought it was germane to our conversation because his summary piece was that it's not about you, it's about them. And I think that's the heart of being an effective extension educator is it's about them. And so we make it about us, maybe we need to recast our thoughts. Our job is really not to solve their problem or to take advantage of their opportunity. Our job is to help them acquire the knowledge that they need and then develop the capacity to solve their own problems. And if we were really good at our jobs, we'd be out of jobs, right? If we're really good at our jobs, people wouldn't need us in the future. Now, I don't think that's going to happen. And I actually think there's some reasons why, our value-added role is going to continue. But I just thought that was an important concept as we think about how we work on community vitality when it hasn't been part and parcel of what we're hired to do. How we work on entrepreneurship issues when our core programming and the things that our counties value and the things that our colleagues in the region value and the things that we're known for as specialists and our value for haven't always been about those things. So how do we shift gears? I think this provides a smoother transition for us if we think about our work in this way. So with that, what I think we're going to do is pause for our break. We're going to spend 15 minutes or so. I've memorized your faces. I'll know if you open them. It's totally up to you. We're going to address 4 questions. We're going to talk about our assets. We're going to talk about our opportunities. We're going to talk about the things that we need from extension administration and others in order to pivot. And then we're going to talk about specific things that we might be interested in doing in the area of entrepreneurship in the context of the community vitality initiative. So we're going to spend the time between the end of the break and lunch talking. I won't be up here. I will be doing the kind of flow. What was his name? Donahue. Yeah. Get more hairs. So we'll be having a conversation and we'll be sharing with each other. So I encourage you to come back if that interests you, and if that doesn't interest you, I respect you enough to know that you should go to another session or check your email in a quiet hallway as you wish. But that's what we're going to do. It's 11:10, so 20 minutes. Connie has said we're worthy of 20 minutes break. So 11:30, we're back here to address 4 questions as a